O tēnā koutou, te aorangi, where's te aorangi gone? Kanui te mihi mō tō whakatau ki a mātou. Mauri ora ki te kaupapa I whakakotahitia I a tātou ki a hui nā tahi. Kia ora, ko Stefan Pishief toko ingoa, ko Ngāti Pākehā te iwi, Engāri no Macedonia oku tīpuna, ko taku hoa wahine, ko Rena Kōhere, e mahi ana au ki whiti ora tai rāwhiti. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hey, greetings everyone. My name is Stefan Pishief, as Holly said, Chief Executive of Whiti Ora Tai Rāwhiti, and wonderful to be here today for this important topic. Thank you, Holly, as well, for the introduction.
Kia ora tātou. Tautoko ngā mihi kua mihi I te ata nei. Rawe te haramai ki te tū kei mui a koutou. Te kōrero e pāna ki tā mātou mahi. Ko wai tēnei, ko Darryl Crawford ahau, no Uawa. I didn't realise I was the East Coast manager. But yeah, my preferred title was actually preferred grandparent. So someone put that up in our workspace. But yeah, just here to tautoko the kaupapa. But yeah, once we get into it, I guess you'll see what kind of mahi we're into.
So do you know what my first thought was when I received this email from Professor Holly Thorpe saying, hey, could you guys please be some of the keynote speakers for today's symposium? Damn. Our firewall's letting spam through again. And then I realised, no, hey, this is legitimate, and my second thought was how amazing that it's being held here in our region in Tai Rāwhiti. And I say that because climate change is certainly a global issue. We know all nations are grappling with the challenges being brought about by climate change, and I think we saw that last year was the hottest year on record. But here, for us, unfortunately, our beautiful region of Tai Rāwhiti has become the poster child for the negative impacts of climate change over the last few years. So I really just want to commend Professor Holly Thorpe for holding it here in our region, given what we have endured over recent years. That's massive. And just a thank you to everyone who has turned up today and everyone who's on the live stream as well. So for us, what are we going to cover off today? This is going to be a little bit of a mixed bag with our presentation. We've thrown a whole lot of slides together. We're the first presenters, so I think we can kind of get away with that, and then everyone can rein things back in. But we're going to do a little bit of a reflection piece on what our region has been through, and with a particular focus as well on Cyclone Gabrielle. We'll talk about what that meant for our organisation at the time, what we saw for some of our sport and recreation codes and clubs, and some of the challenges and opportunities that still exist for them. And then Darryl's going to finish things off talking about the title of our presentation, which is Ūkaipō. And I won't say too much other than that's a real look at the power that sits within communities and what it takes to effectively work alongside them. So probably just do a very brief intro into our organisation, Whiti Ora Tai Rāwhiti. We have about 25 staff. We want to get everyone active and healthy across our region. How else would you describe us, Darryl?
Yeah, I guess we're pretty laid back, but also keen to jump in there and do the mahi with the whānau. I guess for me, I try and spend as much time with my mokos. So because they're at a kohanga or a kura, we get to do that. And a lot of my mahi is based up the coast, but we also have different teams that have different kaupapa and different mahi. So we work with, my main mahi is working with schools and kura, and also with the whare kura and secondary schools, but also part of the funding we get from Sport New Zealand is through Hioranga Pautama, so I do a lot of work with Ngāti Pro. Some people say it's from Kaiti up, but it's probably a bit further out than Kaiti. But yeah, a lot of the mahi we do, we used to be called Sport Gisborne Tai Rāwhiti, so when that changed, actually, while we were called Sport Gisborne Tai Rāwhiti, a few coasties sort of kind of just called us Sport Tai Rāwhiti. So now that we're called Whiti Ora Tai Rāwhiti, yeah, it sits better on a lot of our whānau's ears and probably their hearts as well, because we have people who work for us. Called Shyla, she lives in Matakawa. Kaira, she lives in Tiki. We've got Cass from Ruatoria or from Hiruharama, and then we've got myself from the southern end. So. And then we've got whānau in here that are from Tikaraka, so we try to get people that belong to those communities so we can get more access and I guess have those conversations that other people can't have. But I guess the title, yeah, Stefan was desperate, so we just thought we'd chuck in Ūkaipō as a source of sustenance. But I'll dig into that a bit without boring you about our work streams and how we're funded, but I'll just try and share further on about the mahi we do. And I think for those of you who don't know what whiti ora means, I actually can't remember, but I use, when I explain to people what whiti ora means, I borrow a line from Te Aho Matua and from the English translation, and in that translation they've got te ita o te Māori, but the English translations means to radiate the joy of living. So that's what I like to tell people. They actually made it up, but I did it. Yeah.
Thanks, DC. And we're going to start by just sharing some images that show what our region has been through. And for the locals in the room, I hope this doesn't cause any PTSD, but it's just around sort of setting the scene. And we think images, a picture speaks 1,000 words.
So no ua wahau, no te aitanga hauiti, tētahi oku, okay, sorry. Is it working? Yeah, just for those whānau, no taitanga hauiti ahau, titirangi te maunga ua o te awa. So this is actually out the backyard of where I used to live at Mangatuna. This is Mangatokero, where PT and his whānau got chopped off the roof. That's out the back at up the Arakihi Road. Eh? I actually have to thank the people that took the photos. So Dexter and Het, I used to teach them at school. So yeah, I just borrowed their photos. That's the golf whānau. Yeah, so that's the golf whānau out at Mangatokero. Obviously the Waipawa, and you can see Te Kurea Pāwa in the back there. And this is out at Takapau. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dex, but that's out at Takapau on the way out to up the Kiori Road, up Taufari Road. Yeah, this shot here, this is actually the Highway 35. So that's the road to my marae. Just where that thing there is, that vehicle, that's where you turn into our marae, Henemodia. So Henemodia got categorised category 3, I think, red stickered. So we actually have to move. So we're moving our marae. But on that day, I think Zach might have been on one of those IRBs, one of our trustees, Had's uncle. But yeah, it's pretty devastating to have to move your whare. I'll probably refrain from talking about that a bit more, but yeah, this is kind of what happened. But I guess this highlights that all these pics were actually pre-hail and pre-Gabriel. So that was, all those pics you saw wasn't Gabriel or hail. And I think a lot of people forget that hail actually came before Gabriel. Yeah, so that was quite a, I guess if pre-hail of hail kind of gave us a bit of an uppercut, and then Gabriel kind of knocked us out, if you look at it in that sense. So, yeah. One cool thing that came out of that bridge in Tokomaru Bay was that the locals fixed it. The Blackabees whānau, they fixed that bridge, so it was cool just to see all our locals pumping. And I shot through the road this morning from Ruatoria, and yeah, they're all out there on the road because the roads still need fixing. I was just having a conversation to the bro at the back, and yeah, people think that it happened in 2023 and they think it's over, but it's still ongoing. Yeah, so hail hit us then, Gabriel and Feb. I'm not sure if that's actually a after Gabriel photo, and Dex might be able to help me out, but I just kind of judge it off the policeman. So that's Richard Reeves, and I think he had short hair then. So that's what I'm picking was, yeah, it was pre, so it's pre. The photographer just told me it's pre. And I guess that's another view of our road out to the marae. So Bowler smashed it too, but yeah, that's just how we are. That's out at Pāro. Yeah, that's out at Pāro. So Pāro's out of the back of Uawa. That's Keenan's whare out at Te Karaka. That's his marae. And that's where normally all the waka happens, all the waka ama. So that's the view from the bridge on Rutene Road. Yeah, so lovely views, eh? Lovely what we had to live through.
Thanks, DC. Yeah, pretty sobering photos there, and that's really the key message. We often talk about Gabriel, but there's been 16 extreme weather events that have hit our region since 2017. And if my maths is any good, and I'm not sure that it is, but I think that equates to around 2 extreme weather events each year since then. And we're a region that was known for our golden weather. So when you start to get the frequency of those events, that has a real cumulative effect and a massive negative impact. And I'll just talk quickly about 3 areas, but one just on the whenua, which is the land. After a bad weather event, the land hasn't had time to recover, and then you get another serious event. The land is already compromised, and the effect is far worse than if that weather event was just in isolation. Funders, we were blessed. We had some funders who came to the party both regionally and nationally to help out. But a similar thing, if we keep having these events happening frequently, then funders don't have time to replenish their coffers. The funding dollar gets really stretched. If you even look locally, we've got the Gisborne District Council, we've got the beautiful beach out here midway down to Waikanai. That has many times been covered in slash and wooden debris. The council will clean up the beach with its operating budget. A few months later, another weather event hits. The land is compromised, so it doesn't take much for a whole lot more slash to come down onto the beach. The council's got no more funding to clear it. So those are some of the issues we're facing. And finally, just critically, that cumulative effect of constant events on the psychological well-being, the mental well-being of our community. Everyone here, every local in this room would have been affected to some degree. There have been levels of trauma, anxiety. That hasn't fully gone away. And a lot of people are still worried about the future of our region. But if we go back, if we click back, if we go back to the next slide, Darryl will now talk a little bit about in the immediate aftermath of Cyclone Gabriel, so that was February 2023, what that meant for us and our communities.
Yeah, I guess just a comment about your guys' beach. So up in Ūkaipō, where we're from, they often referred to our beach, because what they did was they just piled up all the slash, all the logs that was on the beach. So someone referred to it as 90-pile beach, because there was that many piles of wood that we had to burn. Yeah, and then once they lit it, it kind of just drifted through the whole town, but yeah, is what it is. So yeah, you guys got nice beaches, just saying. So yeah, I mean, I think everyone's familiar with the impact. Like, yeah, there was no power. It was interesting for my boy and I think once the roads opened from Ūkaipō to Gisborne, we came in to catch up with Stefan and Kylie. And yeah, my boy kind of freaked out at people just sort of wandering around looking a bit dazed. And yeah, it was just interesting to see who hadn't actually been through having no water, having no power. I'm not sure of the communities that have their own tanks here in Gisborne, but up the coast everyone has their own water supply, so there was no issue for us, but you really felt for the whānau in Gizzy that had the water supplies cut off and no power. Obviously no FPOS. Yeah, and obviously you couldn't buy anything because there was only cash. So it was pretty horrendous to be going through it. I guess personally for me, the leadership that Stefan and Kylie had at that time, we never really had to worry about our normal day-to-day mahi. I know some people elsewhere, they had to still do the work, but none of us were sitting at our desk and finishing off reports or doing. We were helping out where it mattered. I was at my marae with kids, and we were just cleaning it up and just helping out around Tolaga where we could, because a lot of the places were actually cut off. But it was just comforting to know that you didn't have to really worry about your normal day-to-day job as such. You could get in there and help out where it matters. And I think this is some of the crew. Kenan and H, I think they shot down to Warrell to help out down there. There was a lot of cleaning going on. I know Deb's made a comment about cleaning out rats from a container somewhere, but just that kind of stuff just took the worrying about your work. So yeah, not much work got done then. This, if we can count it as work, was probably, as one of the Te Karaka students, was one of the best days of our lives. With Te Karaka being so impacted by the floods, there was a lot of trauma. It's still going on now, but we were able to do a collab with Gizzy board riders, and we took most of the Te Karaka area school out to Makarori, and Flo and all his crew, they bought the boards, they bought their expertise, and we just gave the kids a good day out at the beach. So it was a massive, massive day. Weet-Bix, they came to the party, and they're still at the party. So it used to come just to Gisborne, and it was done a bit differently with the traditional triathlon, but now they've kind of got a different event, and having them come up to Ngata College that year was huge because they had never been up the coast anyway, but I guess it helped having Julia Tilley from Gizzy, always good to have a local girl, and then last year was in Uawa and up at Te Araroa. This year it's going to be held here again in April at 3 days. There's 3 days in Gisborne, and then there's a day in Tolaga, and there's a day at up at Te Waiu in Ruatoria. So yeah, hats off to these guys because they took away a lot of the. You could see kids just having fun for fun's sake. These ipu tākaro or playpacks, Etienne them drove them around to all the schools in Kura, and I think some may have got picked up. I'm not sure how they got out there in the end, but if you can, those two young wahine up there, I'm pretty sure they're from Whangara School. What we did was we went out and we sat with the kids and see what they wanted in a pack if ever a weather event came again. And so all the things in those boxes and those bags, those are straight from the kids' mouths. That's what they wanted to play with if there was another event. A couple of the kids in Tolaga told the teachers that you shouldn't have rugby balls in there, which she kind of freaked out, but their perspective was that if you're playing rugby on the field, you'll damage the field if it's too wet to run around on. So they kind of get an understanding of what's going on in their community. And then I'll hand over to Stefan.
Thanks, DC. Thanks for giving me a little compliment in there too. Appreciate it. I'll give you that food hamper in the car park later on. Just from that, obviously, yeah, as Darryl talked about, in a time of crisis, business as usual just goes out the window, and you're really focused on what's happening in communities and what are their needs and how can you best support that. Before I talk about funding, just want to mention when it comes to the official response, there'll be a regional leadership response to the crisis, supported nationally as well. And I think for us in the sport and rec sector, it's just acknowledging the reality that we're not going to be a priority. And that's not a dig at the regional response, but it's simply they're worried about housing, safety, critical infrastructure like getting the roads and the bridges reopened, power, water. So sport and rec does fall down the pecking order a little bit, and that's really hard because what we saw during that time, and as Darryl showed some of the positive events, people in our community, they needed to be active. They were wanting to do the activities they love, they were wanting to reconnect with one another. It was huge for people's well-being and just their mental health in order to be able to get through a crisis. So I think one dilemma for us is how do we just really keep raising the prominence of how important sport and recreation is, and that it's not just a nice to have, but it's actually a must-have as well. With funding though, some funders came to the party. We're hugely appreciative, and we took a bit of a co-funding approach. A number of funders were happy for us to be the party that distributed funds, and I want to do a massive shout out to Trust Tairāwhiti. I know there are some people here in the room from that organisation, Eastern Central Community Trust, Department of Internal Affairs, and of course Sport New Zealand. And the co-funding approach just allowed funding to be streamlined, to get it out the door really quickly where it needed to go, and it stopped the duplication. So we think it's a really effective model that we'd like to see continue more in normal times as well. With the funding demands from our community for sport and recreation, there were sort of three key areas that needed to be funded, and the first was to replace damaged equipment or damaged facilities or lost equipment. A lot of groups lost stuff, and one thing to note is that for a lot of groups, they didn't have insurance, or they only had limited insurance. And that's just due to the fact that our sectors are often, they run on a smell of an oily rag, or they're staffed by volunteers. So with insurance premiums now going up, given climate change, given the frequency of weather events, that's going to be a real issue for how do we ensure that our sporting sector can insure what they have. And perhaps there's an opportunity for more collective insurance premiums that are done for a whole range of groups under one body. There was also a real request for funding to travel and for accommodation because a lot of groups are wanting to attend tournaments in other regions. The main road to Hawke's Bay was out for months. And especially for our tamariki and rangatahi, they were coming off the back of COVID where they had missed out on competing in things that they'd been working towards for years and years, and that has a huge demoralising effect. So suddenly now it cost a lot more to travel to get away, but we wanted to make sure that that could happen. And then the final funding request was really around the area of wanting funding for putting on positive activities in local communities. People wanted to run something, they saw that people were flat, they were down, and that's what they were requesting funding for. So hundreds of thousands of dollars got out the door extremely quickly that way. The normal processes were thrown out, so people didn't have to fill in a funding application. And it always makes you think, perhaps, you know, if we can do that in a time of crisis and people don't have to jump through hoops, how about we try and do that in business as usual as well? Still accountability at the end. When the time is right, we'll still talk to people about how that money was spent, but let's just make it easy to get it out the door. And just a big plug also, New Zealand Community Trust came to the party with about $250,000, along with some money from some national sporting organisations for what we called the Pay Half, Play Hard campaign. After the cyclone, we were worried that the winter sports, there'd be a real drop-off in participation due to the fact that a lot of people were worried about their jobs, contractors didn't have any work, people were tapped out. So it reduced the fees for our main winter code sports down to half. And you can't quite see the graphs there, but basically the results were we saw across pretty much all of them, bar one, an increase in participation, which was awesome to see. So yeah, that's a little bit about the funding space. There's two reports I want to speak to briefly, and the first is a report that we commissioned just to look at our organisation's response to the cyclone. Not because we wanted to try and pat ourselves on the back, but more to look at what learning can we take, how can we be better prepared for another cyclone. And I want to acknowledge Irina Hurihanganui, who did that report for us, and a big thank you to Sport New Zealand for the funding to do it as well. Irina went out and talked to over 40 sporting rec community groups that received cyclone relief funding about what they had been through and the impact of that funding. And from it there were a range of recommendations, and these are just some that we're working through as an organisation but might be applicable to some of you who have organisations who do similar stuff. So certainly it showed that our ability to collect data, to effectively share it, to map what was happening in our region, you know, which communities were okay, which communities were getting funding, there were some gaps. So we're looking at how we improve our systems and processes, particularly around that mapping, so we know what's going on in real time. The report was complimentary about the fact that we have team members, as Darryl mentioned, who are based out of the office. They live and work in the communities they serve up the coast, but of course there are other communities that we weren't in. So do we look at increasing the number of the team we have out in the region? Lots to weigh up, but that's something for many of you who might work with organisations that look after a region. What is your staff distribution? Might be something worth thinking about. And then there were some suggestions around removing barriers for the community to access our services, the co-funding opportunities that I've talked about as well. That flowed into a further sport and recreation sector recovery report that we pulled together, so a lot of information from Marina and some other interviews that we did as well. And from that there were a few key themes that came through. Those were the three areas that generally our sport and rec community talked about the impact on them of the extreme weather events in Cyclone Gabrielle. I won't talk about each of them. The only one I will mention is just on the tile, the environment, just to reinforce how closely linked sport and recreation is with the environment, with the tile. The links are huge. It just goes right across the board. You know, you think about we're an aquatic region, so when the awa, when the rivers are damaged, suddenly waka ama, rowing, kayaking is out of action. When the beaches are inaccessible, it affects surf lifesaving, surfing, people wanting to swim, wanting to fish, sometimes more than just for recreation, but more for sustenance. Then we've got the trails and the hills, you've got sporting fields that are closed, golf courses, bowling greens. It went right across the board. This is just showing a few quotes just taken from some of the reports. And if you flick to the next one, and this is just some of the comments that speak to that anxiety, that trauma that a lot of people were feeling, that I'm sure you'll hear about more in some of the presentations later today. There were a few priorities that came out of the report, and one, just given what I talked about the environment before, how do we as sporting and rec groups, how do we ensure that we have more of a say or a seat at the table when it comes to regional responses about restoring the environment or making the environment more resilient to future weather events? Because that's something probably for sport and rec, the voice is missing at the moment. With regards to facilities, a lot of our facilities, and I'm sure it's the same in the rest of the country, they're old, they're no longer fit for purpose, and they're not in a position to cope with the changes that we will see brought about by climate change. So it's probably accelerating the conversations around, well, what facilities do we need? That hubbing, multi-purpose facilities, bringing groups together. We've got to think about, if we build things, how do we keep our carbon footprint low? Obviously, we've got to think about what we're contributing to that. But I'll give you an example. Here in Tairāwhiti, we don't have a multi-purpose indoor centre, and some work is happening to try and progress that. So if anyone in the room has got a spare $20 million, please have a little chat to me over coffee later on. But what's being put into the conversation already is, could a centre like that also be an evacuation hub for people during a time of crisis? Could it have a roof designed where people could go to if there's a tsunami coming in? So starting to factor in those things around climate change. And finally, just the governance, succession. A lot of our groups, they're not-for-profit, they're volunteers, they're struggling, and when they're tapped out, given everything else going on, what support is there for them? So we're starting to have the conversation more about the opportunities for shared roles, possible mergers of groups. Could there be umbrella bodies that support a whole range of little groups with some of their needs? And Darryl's doing some work with that with the Ngāti Porou Collective up the coast. So yeah, there's some solutions, but by no means have we worked through them all yet. But now I'll hand back over to Darryl, and he will close us off talking about Ūkaipō. So,
thanks, Stefan. So Ūkaipō is one of our approaches to one of Sport New Zealand's priorities. So their priority is geographic priority communities, and our approach is Ūkaipō. So it's a source of sustenance. So with Ūkaipō and with anything, and in particular sport, whanaungatanga's core to it. It's actually the reason why teams perform, and it's at the base of it. So this photo here is actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Iti, Kina, but I think it was about 120 something kids we got up the maunga, and might have been close to 140 or something all up with the adults. And Ngāti Porata is just giving everyone a kōrero about Te Takapaua Māui. So for us, that's a source of sustenance, because Māui is our tipuna. And all of these kura kaupapa Māori kids, we spent 3 days together. I'm just guessing with that number, but I'm sure it was about 3. And we stayed up at Kawakawa Mai Tawhiti, actually all over the top end of the coast, but a lot of the kura in town came up, and we did lots of sporting events, lots of different kaupapa, but central to that was our whanaungatanga, and that's how we roll at work. I don't want to bore you with which bits of funding we get from Whatuora or from Sport New Zealand or from over here and over there. I guess what we're trying to do with our mahi is actually work together. Probably means I've got to listen to Debs or Trace now and then, but it's not working with me just at the kura. It's not us just doing that. And we have the ex-Poverty Bay Heartlands coach here. His job is to do one thing, but I've got other ideas for him. And I think it's just working to our strengths. And of course, making sure that we access their whakapapa too. So like, he's actually from Uawa, so he should be coaching Uawa, just quietly. But yeah, that's pretty much our mahi, is to ensure that we're covering all our bases by working with the people that we trust, I guess. So this pic here, these two old fools, they should have actually stopped playing rugby, but this was the year of Gabriel, and our team is the team in blue, and normally we play up the coast, so our competition is up the coast, but because we couldn't get up the coast, we were afforded the ability to, we kind of got permission, I guess, to play in the Tūranga competition, the Poverty Bay Comp. So part of the Poverty Bay Comp includes teams from Wairau, and this is a couple of old guys, and we're playing the game in Wairau. So the impact of the weather on us as clubs and us as people, we were able to continue those sporting events and just playing against whānau, but I think it highlighted the importance of humour and kindness. Like, these two were just going at it the whole game. I think Pūti started a fight and he got sin-binned, but afterwards, it just caught up with everyone, and the whanaungatanga just shone through. And it was huge for us because we had nowhere to play our rugby. Our kids have always come to town, but with the roads being cut off and the Hikuwa Bridge, we couldn't actually get up the coast. So, as men do, they need their own space, and this is a good space for us to go and play rugby. And just thanks to the Pauri Bay Rugby Union for allowing us. We're back up the coast now where we belong, I suppose. The roads still have an impact on us up the 35, but it was really cool to be able to host events. This photo is actually from an event last year, not the year of Gabriel, but just that whanaungatanga again. It's huge, and it wasn't just the kids qualifying for nationals. It was the fact they could get together. They had that whanaungatanga. They were playing with their whānau, and you could just share ideas and share whakaaro about what was cool. Everyone wanted to win, obviously, but a lot of it was about being together and just being well. This shot here, this was at the Ngāti East Coast surfing comp. So we still couldn't get up the coast, so I had just got back from Wellington, so my wife drove the Mangatuna van with all the surfies in it, and I got off the plane. I had to drive through the gorge and back around the Cape, and then we stayed at Wharikahika where the comp was, had a massive day. It was every school from north of Tokomaru Bay was there, but we also had Maraenui, we had Whanau Apanui, and we had Kurowhanga Prawa. So we had 3 Apanui kura there. And it was massive. It was huge occasion. And again, that whole whakapapa came to the forefront. It was just good to celebrate being us. And obviously a massive shot there of that whole tuakana teina, that manaakitanga, that tiakitanga, and of course being in our ocean. The JAB started back up the coast. This photo was actually taken last year by me, and I just put it up there because my moko's in it. But rugby is huge up the coast. It's life. And when we didn't have the ability to go and play up at Whangaprawa, go and play TVC, or go to Hicks Bay and play them, if I'm being honest, it just sucked. So having our kids being able to play on the coast and just get into any kind of sport, regardless of the sport, it was huge. Stefan touched briefly on some kura, some clubs accessing some funding. So I can recall, I think it was Lytton and might have been Tolaga. They were sending teams to the Waka Nationals that year, but because they couldn't train in this river or they couldn't train up home because of all the debris still in there, they actually applied to us for extra funding, and they went away earlier. And they went to Rotorua, all those Te Arawa Wakaama clubs. They helped them with waka. They got on the water. I can't remember who did it, but I know that there was a time where they applied to us, and then, being able to go to national events. I know the gorge wasn't as impacted as the roads from here to Tekaraka and Tekaraka to Matawai, but those are our main routes to get away. So it was cool that we could get away. We hosted National Kiorahi last year, and it was good to for us as Whiti just to collab with Tūranga Health. And again, just a massive day for our kids. There have been other events, I'm just not too shabby on what those are, but just having the ability to share that whanaungatanga, and obviously Māori TV covered this event, and it was huge. I think there were about 36 teams, 35 teams that come from all over the motu, so it was huge. So, and again, what's core to it is that whanaungatanga. So with our mahi and with sport, I guess, it's It's those connections that you have, and that we have, and it's those relationships that matter. I was at my wife's kura yesterday, and these guys rocked up from an entity to talk about the solar panels, but they hadn't asked the principal if they could come. They just turned up, and my wife, being my wife, just sort of said, "Well, what are you here for?" Blah blah blah. Well, you got 3 minutes because you didn't let me know you were coming. I think sometimes entities, organisations, or people who don't know how a kura or a school runs, you won't have access unless you've got a really good relationship. Some of us can wander into a school and have a kōrero, but there's this tikanga that goes with this. You can't just sort of say, "Yep, I've got the magic pill for you, here it is," because they don't care. They care when they know how much you care about them, but until then, that's what matters. That's what gets us to. That's what gives us the ability to have good conversations with the people that matter here and the people that matter up the coast. And just to finish off, won't be long. I guess for us, one of our mahi with Sport New Zealand is a kaupapa called Active Airs. So with Active Airs, we tend to do things that we feel are best for our people once we've actually spoken to our people. So we flip things around, and we've got 2 kaupapa with Active Airs. One here in town is called Te Kura o Te Ūkaipō, which is all based around Pūrākau. And then up the coast, with our 5 secondary schools in wharekura, we have a kaupapa called Ūkaipō Pākihi. And Ūkaipō Pākihi highlights what's important to us as a people. So there's a video here, and yeah, if there's any questions after that, we'll go for it.
So Ūkaipō Pākihi is a cultural platform that expresses our whakapapa and whanaungatanga and allows all the students in the Ngāti Porou East Coast schools to come together in sport and cultural activities and recreational activities.
Ngauri o Hingangaro me Iranui are here today to compete, have fun, but also create that whakawhanaungatanga that should be happening along the coast.
When you're doing it, it's like you're one with the others, you know? You're not by yourselves, you're like getting out there with each other, playing with each other, singing with each other. Era mea katoa.
Lately, it has been about not just ensuring that everybody is involved in physical activity, but also that we are taking care of our oranga wairua, our oranga tinana, wera momo, oranga katoa.
It was a really good opportunity for students that may not like sports to have another opportunity for them, and it was just really impressive, some of the meals that they created, the ideas that they came up with. What they produced was actually really amazing and really special. So big hats off to them, big hats off to all the students that stayed on their feet for 3 hours and just did the mahi.
And that's been our whole purpose, is about inclusivity and making sure that everyone that comes to Ūkaipō Pākihi is participating in one way or another.
Wakaama is a big part of our curriculum here at Tolaga Bay Area School. And we just thought, why not get our kids out on our awa, showcasing what we have here and for them to have an awesome experience in the taiao. Yeah, as Māori people, we have a strong spiritual connection as well as a physical connection to the water. And wakaama and surfing are ways that get us out there and in the taiao.
Like I said before, it's about that diversity, it's about that range of activities that we've had on offer in the last 2 days, and it's just been a great vibe to be around.
This thing of Ūkaipō Pākihi, it's been pretty good so far. Probably my highlight was performing on stage our song, getting to talk to the bros from up the coast. I don't really get to see them often now since I've been here. Being good vibes, making new connections, making new friends, yeah.
That's like what whakawhanaungatanga is really about, is just being together, like catching up with each other, making new connections.
Tō māua tino, mea o tēnei kaupapa ko te whakawhanaunga ki te tau e tai kura. He mama, nā te mea tino tata mātou. He kaupapa pai tēnei te whakakotei wanganui a mātou.
Mai tiro pai ki au, te whakapōpaki, te whakawhanaungatanga, ki ngā kura o Ngāti Parau, te whakamai I roto I te pēni.
He tino pai tēnei ngā te mea, te whakawhanaungatanga, ko te taku tino whai, te pai ki te pōro, I roto I te pōro.
My highlight was probably playing netball or fast five against the other schools. It was, yeah. And the rest of it was a fun experience. All the sports that we played in Ūkaipō Pākehī has been great. It's been keeping us fit and healthy.
Me, I'm not really a sporty person. I'm more into the puoro stuff, and doing the music. Kapa haka would probably be my most active, maybe the thing that keeps me moving the most.
So compared to the other kids at the school, a lot of our kids here are into sports, but not me. Music is my way of getting active.
I hate sport. I came to sing. And then in the end I ended up doing some sports. So yeah, it was fun. It was a win-win.
The reason that I came here was just to play basketball, but in the end I ended up trying new things that I would never have done before at other schools, and I think that's a great mix with people who don't play sports and people who do.
We've set a platform for ourselves as the hosting kura, and I know that we want to do more activities, but also tied in to the whole kaupapa of Ūkaipō Pākehī and making sure that we strengthen the whakapapa, we strengthen the pūrākau that we actually have within Taitanga Whiti and Ngāti Parau and Te Whānau Apani.
Our intention is to have Ūkaipō Pākehī more frequently in these times. You know, we cannot underestimate the impact on our children and young people of the 3 years of COVID, or 2.5 years of COVID, but also the impact of Gabrielle, and that is why I say it's not just a focus on physical activity, it's a focus on mental well-being as well.
Ūkaipō Pākehī, Ūkaipō Pākehī, Mauri ora! Mauri ora!
Just to finish off, actually, the cameraman over here, he made the video, him and Dex, and I actually hadn't seen the end of it, so it was cool to see our logos on there, so yeah. Not that it's about people's logos, but I actually listened, and because I don't listen very well, yeah, just the amount of times that the kids brought up whanaungatanga, it was huge, and like Ūkaipō Pākehī is a celebration of one of Hauiti's nets and his older siblings, Taua, Mahaki, and yeah, it is about being together. So yeah, thank you all for your time.